Okay, so it looks like we are recording at this point. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for taking the time to be here this morning. And we have a fairly straightforward agenda today. We're going to do a few things. As always, I love to get started with success stories and things that you're seeing, hearing, experiencing on your end, and just whatever you want to share with the group. I'm also going to do a very brief and abbreviated update on the governor's requested budget, and specifically how that relates to the partnership and innovation work. And I know that this is something that many of you have heard already, and in some cases many times over. So we'll keep that part brief. One of the things that I really want to do is make sure that we have a chance to sort of step back and think about how the partnership and innovation work fits in the bigger picture for pre-K through 3 and where we're headed in Oregon. I think that's important in terms of where we are in the grant cycle, and then also just in terms of where we're headed from a big picture policy standpoint at the state level, and heading into the legislative session, and as the calendar turns from 2014 to 2015, thinking about where this work is headed beyond the current grant cycle. And then from there, I'll actually hand it over to Lindsay from Portland State, who's going to do an update on evaluation and where we are with data entry. So it sounds like we're getting some background noise right now. So again, I would just ask folks, please make sure that your phone is muted on your end, because I'm actually not able to mute from this end. So the section on evaluation and data entry, I think, is a really good opportunity to get a deeper understanding of where we stand. Shucks. Do we still have audio? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, sorry, I gotten a message that it looks like that the call had dropped, and I just wasn't sure if that was for one individual or for our entire group here. So it sounds like people are still on the line. So anyways, evaluation and data entry update is a really good opportunity to just get any questions that you have answered, and also to just sort of give you a better sense of where we're headed with evaluation work. Okay, so let's move to some success stories. Just some guiding questions. What's new? What's going well for you? I know that there are challenges to this work, and would love to hear of any examples of challenges that people have faced and creative solutions that you found with your partners locally. And then, what are some things that you're learning as you go? I think, one of the important parts of this grant is about creating a really deep and rich set of lessons learned that can be shared with the field. So I think that's kind of an ongoing process, and we'd just love to hear what you're learning. So at this point, we'll just go ahead and open it up. Are we still out there, folks?
This is Holly August from the Lane Early Learning Alliance. I can share, I think, a success and a challenge. The success is that we've had a really great professional development. It's just been one opportunity so far, but it had a really nice mix of early learning professionals, K-3 educators, even some community folks, Girl Scout leaders, parents, and I think that was really great. And that was around our SEED project, so the early STEM.
Great.
And I think our challenge, on the other hand, has been and I think that other communities have spoken to this in the past, but getting on the radar of some school districts and really figuring out how we move forward and getting programs in place and really making sure that communication is continuing to happen and that things are actually moving forward has been difficult in a couple areas within our community.
Thanks for sharing that, Holly. Have you what are some of the strategies that you've tried to put in place to kind of overcome that? Because I think that that's something that is probably being experienced in a lot of places.
We're still in the middle, I think, of figuring out how exactly. We've been trying to work with different folks within the district, so at the superintendent level, principals, teachers, trying to figure out who's best to be communicating with and who we need to have buy-in from and who really has the ability to make things move.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but it's for us right now, it's just literally communication. It's getting phone calls returned, emails responded to, even when we're saying, you know, we talked about this months and months ago, we have funds to do this, let's,
mm-hmm.
you know, we're excited. It's literally just communication.
Mm-hmm.
Of the areas.
Yeah.
So if others have strategies they've used that have been successful, I'd love to hear them. And these are areas that are out there, very rural, remote areas, so more difficult to, you know, just have a meeting and sit down face to face, or they're not folks that we often bump into in our other meetings or other things that we're doing.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Are other folks having similar experiences, and if so, what are some of the strategies that you're putting into place to really cement those partnerships with school districts?
Hi, Brett. This is Mary Curtis Gramley, and we have experienced similar kinds of challenges here in Southern Oregon. Some of the schools are a pretty long distance from Medford or stretched over into Josephine County. And we are finding that we just have to go visit the schools. When you're there and can see the classrooms and the teachers, there's a connection made. Mm-hmm. And we found that the teachers are more responsive to our follow-up emails to talk with them about upcoming events and ways in which we might work together. We do have one kind of teeny success story, and that is our conference that's planned for February has attracted an amazing amount of interest from the public school folks, the K through 3. It has a really varied list of trainings and sessions, and there's been a pretty delightful response, very encouraging. We knew that the early childhood professionals, the child care providers, the preschool teachers, the Head Start folks, early intervention folks would be interested, but to attract others from the elementary school has been really very encouraging.
That's excellent to hear. I look forward to hearing more about that.
Hi, Brett. This is Mia. In reference to the seeds work that Holly was talking about in Lane County, we one of the specific strategies we've used that seems to be working so far is to really bring in the whole elementary school community by hosting, for instance, tonight we're having an entire elementary school family night for science and engineering, mm-hmm. and including the early childhood piece in that with some activities, but finding that really to get the buy-in of the principal and the community, it was about doing something for the whole elementary school and then building on that to show the connection to what the early childhood educators and the kids and parents need to be ready to engage in that as they get into elementary school. So that's been one way that seems to help us get traction in those smaller rural communities.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Brett. This is Carol Chemist from Oregon City, and I would just like to share the success that we had. We've had 2 meetings now. David and Mia have come to those kindergarten meetings in Oregon City as they are planning their schedule for next year, and both of them have been a great influence and had great ideas in helping the team go through that process of what kindergarten will look next year.
Oh, great. Great. And what?
This is Kendra.
Hey, Kendra.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you? You got back on the call. Good.
Yeah, I was just going to share one of the strategies we've been using here is really putting in place a governance structure at the regional and then at the district and then at the school level to help build that capacity around really the investment and then increasing knowledge and understanding of pre-K-3 education, and having that all be within the goal is to have it be located within the existing structure of the district. For some of the smaller districts that I work with, it's more of a challenge, just like what others have alluded to. But it has helped to have sort of building that governance structure from the regional district and school level. So, for example, at the elementary schools that are a part of this work, there's pre-K-3 design teams that are based on the elementary catchment area, and then the district, for example, like Pine, we have specific work groups within their organizational structure. We have the pre-K-3 planning work group, we have a full-day K and professional development work group, and then a family engagement work group, and that's within the structure of the Pine School District, and the other districts are moving sort of through that similar process, even though they're small. So, and this is sort of calling upon districts to look at their organizational structure so that it is sustainable versus it's not just this isolated, pre-K-3 group operating over here. It's really trying to build it within the existing structures that districts have, and meeting and coming together on a regular basis has been critical, so that it's not just once every couple of months, so then people sort of forget that they're a part of this work and then invested in it. So that's been one strategy we've used here.
That's great. Thank you. Let's hear from a few more. I can see who's on the call, so and I know there's awesome work happening in communities all around the state, so I don't want to move on from this too quickly.
Hi, good morning. My name Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Well, we're working with 17 elementary schools in Douglas and Lake, and we have staff people from the schools. Most of them are instructional aides and or kindergarten teachers, and I work directly with them, and we are developing leadership groups in each of those elementary schools. And then I am doing professional development with 8 of the Roseburg Public School elementary schools. They're all part of one district, and we're meeting regularly. And I'm also will begin professional development with the entire both counties, where we'll have gatherings, and it'll be coaching, mentoring, training, technical assistance, etc. And people here seem to be really invested. And I also meet with some of them one-on-one, so they all seem really invested. I'm really excited about that.
That's great. What's the professional development focused on, Cynthia?
Well, with the Roseburg Public Schools, with the 8 elementary schools, right now we're talking about helping them understand what the P3 alignment is, and giving them talking points and handouts so that they can actually. I've distilled some information so that they can talk with people in the schools. So it's focused on P3 alignment and what that all means, how that came about, and also leadership, because they're not accustomed to acting as leaders for their school in that capacity.
That's
right
great.
now it's piece realignment, leadership, and it'll move through some phases of things as we approach June.
That sounds really interesting. Definitely looking forward to learning more about that. It sounded like there was another person that was going to share as well.
Yes, my name is Jackie Vargas with Northwest Family Services, and we are working with the isolated families here at the Clackamas County at the McLaughlin Corridor, and we have had a wonderful success, but also challenges as well, as you mentioned. One of our successes is our families are really connecting with our family resource coordinators and working with that early childhood piece and that modern kindergarten piece with our families. We're getting calls from other counties calling us about our family resource coordinators from Marion, Multnomah, and Washington County wanting services. So there's been a lot of momentum going on, and word is spreading about the services that we're providing here in Clackamas County. So we are getting more calls, but at the same time, we're also, just yesterday, my colleague went to the Spanish radio and did some wonderful tips on modern kindergarten, what that looks like in the Spanish community. So it's wonderful to educate our community, even just on the radio as well. So we're targeting those target points as well.
That's great. That's great. All right. We're about 20 minutes in, so I think I'm going to move us ahead. If unless somebody else has something that's really that they're really excited about sharing, this kind of last call.
Hi, Brett. This is May and May Cha and Nancy Anderson from Multnomah County with Early Learning Multnomah and David Dennis District. And so I just want to quickly add in there that we echo a lot of the same kind of challenges that others are facing statewide. I think we have a lot of moving pieces here, and they're all moving at once. One of the things that I know, lessons learned that we're learning along the way is, make a lot of flexibility and room for course adjustments along the way. And so that's really helped. It's trying to move fast, but be planful at the same time. So one of the examples of this is, our community education worker project that is working closely with the schools. We had to, not necessarily backtrack a little bit, but really make sure, right as we plunged into it, that roles and responsibilities and clarity around exactly what the project was on all ends was clear. And so had to step back and craft, MOUs between the health department, the cultural organizations, and the schools, lead agencies for some schools there. And so, and are finding that that process in itself has been extremely beneficial to creating buy-in and bringing people along, so that you're not just kind of dragging them along and they're trying to figure it out along the way, but that they understand right from the start exactly the goals and the purposes of all of that. We're realizing the same thing with even the ECPBIS trainings that we're doing across early childhood and schools as well, that we had built in a plan for coaching, and early on, like in the spring, early summer there, when teachers, we weren't able to engage the kinder teachers as much as we would have liked to, and in the course of doing this project, then we've been out there talking to them and actually saying, okay, so what would support you, and adjusting exactly what that coaching actually looks like to their needs and what they feel would be supportive of them in the classroom. It hasn't actually changed like what we're striving to do, but it has definitely shed a different light, having teachers' voices be kind of central to identifying what they need as support after these types of professional development training.
I think we found similar. We started kind of just moving forward quickly with some of the buildings and hadn't done their job in communicating parts and what we really needed for them and how it kind of could be integrated and embedded into things that were already happening in their school. And that was true of the parent engagement piece, the work that we're doing with CCR and our pre-KK learning community. So we brought them all together about a month and a half ago and kind of went through the entire grant in a very brief, 15-minute principals meeting, and kind of talked about, this is the work, this is where, these are our asks, here's how it integrates to the other initiatives that you're already working on. And then we got some really good input from them about how to make it manageable for both them at the building level, for the secretaries, for the staff, and for them as principals, just from communication on down to the actual events and activities that we're doing. So a little bit of backtrack in some ways, but it was really great because we heard that we needed to connect it to some of the things that were already happening and not have totally separate kinds of events and things going on.
Yeah, and
getting overwhelmed quickly with all of the initiatives and grants from the state, which are all great and great work, but they're all a lot of work.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that's a really good point around, connecting to things that are already happening and making sure that the work that we're doing around connecting early learning with K through 3, whatever that looks like in your community, is not seen as a siloed initiative or a separate program. One of the things that we really talked about in my previous work that was focused on family engagement was we used the mantra that I'm sure some of you are familiar with, program to practice. And basically what that meant was that if what we were doing was seen as a program, programs can go away, right? Programs go away with funding streams. Programs go away when other things become bigger priorities. But if what we were doing in this example, family engagement, but in the work that we are all doing together, P3 alignment, where family engagement is part of that constellation, if it's seen as part of our practice, if it's seen as part of a principal's professional practice, as part of teachers' professional practice, and other people who work in schools and then in the early learning environments, if that type of cross-sector collaboration is just seen as part of what we do and we're connecting it to other things that we're already doing, it's much more likely to stick, and it's much more likely to be a long-term approach to systems change and systems improvement. So I really think that approach is a very wise one to take, even if it means that you're not able to do everything that you wanted to do in one school year. I think that generating the buy-in of school leaders and leaders on the early learning side as well, which I think in some ways is frankly an easier sell. So I tend to focus on school leaders because I think it is a bit of a tougher sell. It is just so critical to our work right now. So thank you all for sharing all of those things. I'm going to move us forward just sort of in the interest of time, although would love to continue just listening to the cool things you're all doing. The next thing I wanted to do is just a very, very brief update on the governor's requested budget for the next biennium as we go into the legislative session, and really with a focus on what this means for the partnership and innovation work and the P3 alignment work in general in Oregon. I know that many of you have seen all of this before, so I'm going to go quick. And, I think, obviously the headline here is that the governor has really put early learning and investing in early learning as very much front and center in the budget request that he has sent to the legislature. So this is a really exciting time to be involved in this work for so many reasons, but to be doing it at a time when the governor is basically saying this is one of, if not my top priority for the coming biennium and for my next term, it's just exciting to be a part of. So some of the big pieces here are the top line, $135 million for additional investments in early learning. That breaks down into a few pretty large different chunks of funding, including a request for expanded access to employment-related daycare subsidy, including mixed delivery preschool, including additional investment in early learning hubs. And it's not really the time to get into what all of that looks like, but basically at the forefront is this large requested investment in the early learning infrastructure in the state. Other Other pieces of investment that are included in the budget going forward that I think are really important to the work that we're doing on this particular grant include an $85 million budget request for what is being called the Age 3 to Grade 3 Literacy Plan. And this has some implications for early learning, but really what it is primarily focused on strengthening supports for K-3 literacy across the board. So that's instruction in schools, but also out-of-school time learning. This proposal includes a significant role for community-based organizations to provide reading and literacy supports for children during summer and after school. It also includes a component around data use and progress monitoring and providing literacy coaching for schools. So $85 million is not likely to be able to do all of these things in every part of the state, but what it will do is allow those school districts and communities that participate to begin piloting in a really meaningful way a new approach to supporting children's early literacy development, and has some really, I think, significant implications for P3 alignment work in the state. And this is one that I think, there's a lot more to come on in terms of the details, both on the funding side and on the programmatic side, in terms of what this ultimately ends up looking like. Additionally, another piece that has really significant implications for our work in the P3 alignment space is a request to fully fund the transition that the state is undergoing to full-day kindergarten. I didn't include a dollar figure here because I'm not 100% sure what the exact figure is, but if I remember correctly, it's somewhere in the ballpark of $200 million. I could be overstating that a little bit, so don't take that to the bank, but a very significant investment in supporting schools to move towards full implementation of full-day kindergarten. And I think that full-day kindergarten presents a really important opportunity for the P3 alignment work in terms of really being a linchpin. And I know that many of you are familiar with that research that talks about full-day kindergarten as a linchpin in P3 alignment. Where I think that really comes to the fore is in terms of the instructional approaches that we see in full-day kindergarten classrooms. One of the rationale for full-day kindergarten is it creates more instructional time, right? But the big question is, what does that instructional time look like? So I heard something recently when we were presenting about doing a presentation on the transition to full-day kindergarten, and I can't remember if this comment came from an early learning provider or if it came from a K-12 educator, but it stuck with me because what the comment was basically, I'm supportive of full-day kindergarten, and I think it's going to be good for kids. But what my concern is that full-day kindergarten will look like a fourth grade classroom where kids are sitting and working individually in their desks all day. And my response to that was that a big part of what we need to be doing with full-day kindergarten is figuring out how we take the best of early learning and how we take the best of elementary instruction and have those two things living together in the same world. I know many of you know Karen Twain, and have probably heard her speak very eloquently about the ways in which instruction in a full-day kindergarten classroom can be really fun and really engaging for children, and at the same time academically rigorous, for lack of a better term. And I think that's what we need to be shooting for with full-day kindergarten. I think that's why I'm so excited about it as an opportunity, because that has implications both for early learning and in terms of future grades. Part of what concerned me about that comment that I just shared with you was, why are kids in fourth grade sitting in desks all day with working individually? That's not what my definition of good quality instruction is, regardless of the age of the child. So I think that Full Day K presents a really timely opportunity to be really focused on what good quality, developmentally appropriate, and highly rigorous instruction looks like in a classroom. Okay, so I'll get off that soapbox. And then the last piece that I want to point out here is really about continued and expanded investment in kindergarten readiness. So that includes investment in early learning hubs. It includes continued investment in early literacy work, which I know that many of you are engaged in as well, in addition to this grant. And it also includes an expansion of the Partnership and Innovation Grant. The current funding level is $4 million. The requested budget bumps that up to $9 million. What we see with that and with all of these pieces over the course of the next 6 months, that's ultimately up to the legislature and remains to be seen. But I am pretty excited and pretty optimistic right now that at the state level we will be able to continue to invest in the work that you all are piloting in some way, shape, or form. And what that looks like from a dollars and cents standpoint, what that looks like from a process standpoint, I don't have those answers yet, but I think that as I've said kind of all along, that we can I know that the funding cycle for this grant is short, but I think that now that we have some numbers on paper and a starting point for the discussion, I think that adds to the sense that I've had all along of being cautiously optimistic that this is work that we will continue to be able to invest in at the state level. And with that, I'm going to move us on. I realize that there may be questions about the governor's requested budget, and I will say I'm probably not the person that's best positioned to answer those questions, but as questions arise, please feel free to send them to me, and I will do my best to follow up on them. Let me change that. I will absolutely follow up on them, and I'll do my best to get you a clear answer. So moving forward, what I want to do just for the next couple minutes is share some information about how the Partnership and Innovation Grants and the work that you're doing situates itself within the bigger picture, from both a budget standpoint, but also just from a policy direction standpoint and where we think we're headed as a state. What you see on the screen right now comes from a policy document that was recently approved by the Oregon Education Investment Board that defined Oregon's pathway to third grade reading. I have these transposed. This should say pathway to kindergarten readiness and third grade reading. And it looks at these different buckets that you see here under the key strategies as these are the spaces or the domains in which we will really be able to move the dial on improving children's kindergarten readiness and third grade reading proficiency. So you see, these are pretty big buckets, right? So if birth to 3 is defined as a key strategy, it's like, well, so what? What's the what in that birth to 3? And I think that's the work that the early learning hubs are leading. And as we go down this list, I imagine that if you take a step back and think about the work that you're doing with your Partnership and Innovation Grant, and also work that you're doing that's outside of the grant but related to it, I hope that you can see that work fitting into these different buckets, these different strategies. Certainly, I think that the quality early child care, early years to kindergarten, third grade reading, I think those are sort of obvious connection points. And then others like dual language progress monitoring and culturally responsive teaching practices, I think those are things that, depending on what your project focuses on, may not be quite as explicit, but I know that some of you are actually doing projects that include a progress monitoring component, and culturally responsive teaching practice and culturally responsive engagement with families and children. I think it just fits in so well with the type of work that so many of you are leading. So don't want to stay on this too long, but I would be interested to hear what thoughts, questions people have about this. Maybe this is old news to everybody, but I just sort of wanted to take a step back and think about where your work fits from a big picture standpoint. Okay. Well, just something to reflect on. And if you're interested in seeing the policy document, I've included the link here. So one of the other things that I wanted to share with you, just in terms of thinking about how this work fits in big picture, and again, I'm sure that this is something that you've all seen before. This is a map that the Children's Institute put together to show how the work that has been really initiated through the early works projects at Earl Boyles in the David Douglas School District and in Yoncalla in North Douglas County have created this ripple effect for pre-K through 3. So what you see here are the sites that are either early work sites, partnership and innovation grantees, or the P3 alignment grantees that are funded primarily through the Oregon Community Foundation, but also receive support from Ford Family and a few other foundations as well. So what's so interesting and exciting to me about this map is that not only is this work really growing throughout really every region of the state, but so many of the blue dots for partnership and innovation actually include a bunch of different school communities. So you heard Cynthia say in the South Central Early Learning Hub in Douglas and Lake County, they're actually working with 17 schools. I know that in Marion County, Early Learning Hub Inc. is working with 16 schools. I know that Early Learning Multnomah and Lane Early Learning Alliance are all working with multiple sites. Same out in Eastern Oregon with the Malheur ESD and Intermountain ESD working with so many different school communities. So the reach of what your work is doing is so much bigger than what we see on this map, and so much bigger than even what's happening in your own communities. And I know that for the day-to-day work that you're doing, it requires you to be very focused and intensive on what's happening right in your communities and the folks that you're working with locally. But I also think it's important, and I think you all deserve a huge accolades for the work that you're doing to really set the stage for systemic change and school improvement and improved outcomes for children across the state. And I think that's probably something you don't think about a whole lot on a day-to-day basis, but if that's not something that you ever take a step back and just sort of pat yourself on the back for, take the opportunity now to do so, because it's the work that you're doing is certainly valuable for the children and families in your own communities, and it's also valuable. The reach goes far beyond that. So the way that we're trying to get our hands around all of this at the state level is through, and I'm sure many of you have heard me talk about this before, kind of a formalized public-private partnership focusing on P3 alignment. These are some of the key partners. These are not the only people or organizations that are involved in this. But myself and Kara Williams at the Department of Education, who I know many of you know, are working very closely with the Community Foundation and the Children's Institute, and then also Ford Family, Social Venture Partners, and Beth and her team at Portland State to create a shared approach to P3 alignment in the state. But not just a shared approach, but also really focusing on some very specific priority areas. So this is we have a work plan that we've developed and are moving forward. And I just want to give you a sense of what some of the big ticket items are in that work plan. First and foremost is around advancing a shared vision for pre-K alignment in Oregon. So the work that you're doing certainly contributes to that in a very significant way. I think one of the things that we'll see happening this year is work around standards for children ages 3 to 5. As you know, the Head Start framework serves as Oregon standards for children ages 3 to 5. And as I think you also know, we have some work to do with making some of the components of that framework more explicit in terms of indicators and in terms of what we expect to see for children as they enter kindergarten. And I know that many of you are actually kind of out in front of that work and have done that work at the regional or local level, and that's something we need to catch up to at the state level. The next piece that's really very much on our shared work plan is around sharing tools, research, and resources. And this is an area, so one example of this is the sort of first version of the universal P3 toolkit that we put together and shared at the Early Years to Early Grades conference last fall. We are taking steps to have that toolkit become more of an interactive and more of a user-friendly resource that I hope to be able to share with you in the next few months. But also just sort of local resources and tools that are put together. So for examples of that, and these are things that I would love if you all would send me, things like job descriptions, MOUs. I was contacted by a gentleman yesterday in the Clatskanie School District who said, hey, I attended Early Years to Early Grades conference. We're doing some work around P3 in our community. Do you have examples of mission and vision statements that other school districts and communities have put together so that we, have a starting point for that work? And I thought, I was so excited that he was asking me the question, and I felt so bad that I didn't have that for him. So anything along those lines that you have that you can share with me to allow us to develop a resource bank is really valuable, and I very much appreciate those of you who have been sending me things like that. It's wonderful. Try to move through this a little more quickly. One of the other things that we're doing with our partners in the private sector is convening shared professional development opportunities. So Early Years to Early Grades was an example of that. I think we'll see another type of opportunity like that later this spring. In the latter part of 2015, one of the things that we want to do is work probably with some type of national technical assistance provider and in partnership with the early learning hubs and you all, will be around designing and implementing a regional training and technical assistance model and learning from your experiences and building on that in a way that allows us to sort of systematize the approach. Definitely have some more work to do on that. And then, of course, in partnership with Beth, Lindsay, Callie, Mackenzie, and Wen at PSU, evaluating P3 approaches and strategies, and having that quantitative and qualitative, lessons learned approach and building capacity through evaluation is so critical. And then the last piece that I just want to share, because I think that there is going to be some follow-up coming down the road on this, is around identifying and sharing promising practices in a way that is systematic and allows us to be really thorough and thoughtful and coordinated in the ways that we share what's happening around the state. So these are kind of the priority areas for that. And this allows us to really hold up the good work that you all are doing and that others are doing as well. So we're about to shift gears before and really take a look at the evaluation and data entry pieces. Before we do that, I want to open it up for questions, comments, and reflections. But I think for me, the reason that I wanted to share all of this big picture information from budget to how your work fits in the policy area, and as well as the work that we're doing with the public-private partnership, is because I know that we are asking a lot of you in terms of evaluation and in terms of data entry, and I know it's a big ask. I know you're all extremely busy, and I know that for some of you, particularly those of you that are early learning hubs, this is not the only thing that we're asking for of you at this exact moment in time. And I know that that can be frustrating. And I just want to say that I really greatly appreciate the attention that you give to that. The evaluation and data entry components of this grant are absolutely critical to be able to not only share the story of what you're doing locally, but in terms of building statewide capacity and statewide momentum for this work, that the information that you share back with us through the evaluation process is really what allows us to have the foundation to go out and say, this is what's working, this is what we're seeing, these are the outcomes that we're getting for kids, families, and schools and communities. So I just want to say a thank you for taking the time to do that, and let you know that from my perspective, it's really one of the most important pieces of the work that we're doing with this grant. And with that, I'll be quiet and open it up for questions and comments. Is there anything that was new for anybody, or is this all kind of old news at this point? And if it's old news, I'm sorry that I bored you with it.
Brad?
Yes?
This is Cynthia.
Hi, Cynthia.
Some of it's new and some of it's not.
Okay.
I think, though, I don't know about anybody else, but my head is pretty much wrapped around finishing the quarterly report.
Mm-hmm.
And I have so many schools to incorporate into that report that I'm not fully, in all honesty, I can't do this webinar. So I wanted to be honest and ask if just in the future if we could not, have a webinar on a day when a quarterly report isn't due.
Okay. That's a good piece of feedback.
And I don't mean that to be criticism or anything. I know stuff happens the way it happens, and that's life, and we all have to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm having a bit of a problem focusing because I'm thinking about this report.
Okay. Fair enough.
Just a little input.
Fair enough.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Cynthia.
Okay.
Hi, Brett. This is Rose Fuller from Northwest Family Services, and I really appreciated you bringing in the big picture, also sort of future thinking, future direction, and the way that we can contribute to the system and policy and really together collectively learn from each other, but also bring that to others in the state and possibly other places. And I'm real excited about the toolkit.
Great. Thanks. Other thoughts before we move on?
Brett, this is
Yeah.
Nancy.
Okay.
I'm really excited, of course, about the advancing a shared mission for P3 alignment, especially with the thought of whatever more common core standards we might be looking at statewide. And within that, I'm really going to be interested in the work that everyone is doing around whatever type of assessments or formative assessments are going to be used with kids, because right now I see lots of places using lots of different assessments, and the TS goals is really huge for people to try and embed in a lot of pre-K classrooms that aren't Head Start, and I think it's even overloading some of the Head Start pre-K teachers. And so I'm just looking forward to the work and the research that you do of what other states are doing around that assessment piece.
That's great. And I think that formative assessment piece is going to be huge for the age 3 to grade 3 literacy plan that I was mentioning a few minutes ago. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our section around the evaluation and data entry. So, Lindsay, if you are there.
Yep, I'm here. And I wanted to double check before we get started to see if Beth had any comments she wanted to share or thoughts. Thanks, Lindsay. It's Beth. No, I'm just, we, like Brett, appreciate all the work that you're doing to participate in the evaluation, and we're going to go through some updates today, kind of where we are with the evaluation, as well as some reminders around data entry and data collection, and then give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you have about the data that you're collecting. So I think, without further ado, I'll just turn it over to Lindsay, who's going to walk us through our slides here today.
Thanks.
Great, thanks.
And Lindsay, before you get started, I think I was able to just give you control of my mouse so that you should be able to navigate the slides yourself. But this is kind of an experiment here, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Brett. All right, so I think I'm having trouble. Oh, no. We did change slides. Okay. So, as you all know, you've all completed the first quarterly report last quarter, and there was a lot of rich information about planning activities and some of the first kindergarten transition, professional development, and family engagement activities that you began to implement. And we really enjoyed reading and compiling those reports, and we're also looking forward to doing that within the next couple of weeks as you submit your second quarterly progress report today. We're also in the process of developing the Level 2 evaluation. So we've been working with several grantees, including the Yamhill Early Learning Hub, Frontier Early Learning Hub, Elm, David Douglas School District, Forest Grove School District, High Desert ESD, as well as Oregon City School District to formulate some questions, and we're going to be conducting a series of interviews and focus groups related to the different strategies around kindergarten transition, professional development, and family engagement that each of these communities is implementing. And data collection around the Level 2 evaluation will really begin this spring. So hopefully in late March, April, and May, we'll be doing more on the Level 2 evaluation. We're also in the process of finalizing the Family Engagement Outcome Survey, and the intent of this survey is really to capture some broad information from parents that have participated in ongoing or a series of parent events. And hopefully the Family Engagement Outcome Survey will be administered kind of at the last session of the series. So we're really hoping to roll it out before any of the last sessions of your ongoing family engagement events happens. And that should happen, the rollout of that survey, we're hoping happens towards the beginning of February or late this month. And then finally, as you all know, we've set up a Google site for each of you, which houses information related to data for demographic and outcome surveys that you've collected. And as part of this, we've set up data sites where you can enter data from these ongoing or multi-session events, both for the demographic surveys and the outcome survey. So let's talk a little bit more about what that data entry process looks like using the Google Forms. So again, we've set up these data sites for each of you for a couple of reasons. For tracking and reporting purposes to Brett and the ELD, it's really helpful to us and hopefully to the ELD as well to have all of the data from surveys stored kind of in one large place. And because we have all of the data in one place, it's really easy for us to set up formulas to summarize the information automatically for you, and we're hoping that that information is useful for you to directly put into your quarterly progress report, as well as reflect on the activities that you're doing. So both from professionals participating in professional development activities and parents from kindergarten transition and family engagement activities. And all of the reports that have been summarized based on the data that you enter into the Google Forms will be posted on your data site. And we'll look at one of those coming up here pretty quickly. And finally, we wanted to streamline the data entry process so that everyone uses a similar system for handling their demographic and outcome outcome survey data, so that some who have less capacity for dealing with the data have a system for use, and that everyone does it similarly. All right, so using the Google Forms that have been set up, you can enter both the demographic survey data, and we have demographic surveys, just as a quick reminder, for the kindergarten transition activities, professional development activities, and family engagement activities, as well as the 2 outcome surveys that we have for you currently, and that's the kindergarten transition parent or caregiver survey, as well as the shared professional development outcome survey. And again, that family engagement outcome survey will be, fingers crossed, coming shortly. And please do keep in mind that both the demographics and outcome surveys are intended to be administered at ongoing or multi-session or multi-series events. And when we say ongoing activities, what we're thinking of are really multi-session series where participants come to many, if not all, of the events. And the content can build across each of these events, but that's not necessary to be counted as kind of an ongoing activity. Hopefully, really, the base for that is that participants, or many of the participants, are showing up at multiple events, and it's, the intent is really to build some kind of community. It doesn't have to be necessarily called a learning community, but some kind of community throughout these events.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but is anybody else getting a lot of feedback?
It sounds like we're getting feedback. I'm not sure if that was a question. I will double check to make sure that.
This is Mia from the Seeds Project, but I really can't hear anything you're saying. It's all garbled. I didn't know if it's just my phone.
It's clear on my end.
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
It's clear on my end, too.
Is anyone else having issues? Okay. So Mia, I'm not sure if maybe hanging up and calling back in will help.
Now you're broad and clear. I can call back in though if it starts again.
Okay, all right. Great. Well, I'm glad it's going all right.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are we able to ask questions as we go, or do you want us to save questions for the end?
No, yeah, questions are definitely welcome.
So specifically in terms of the ongoing activities and the demographic information related to like Table 2, A2, when we talk about the estimated total number of children impacted, and I sent an email, this is Kendra, by the way, like when we look at the regular needs and activities for like pre-K3 design teams, which are essentially PLCs, and then like the regional pre-K3 design team. When we look at those numbers, like for example in the regional, the estimated total number of children impacted, do you want that large number, meaning like the assistant superintendent of the ESD is on that team? So essentially we're looking at, on what does he serve, like 100,000, between the districts? And is it that sort of number for all of them? Or it seems like it would get kind of out of control if I was adding up all those numbers. And how are we looking?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Thanks, Kendra. So I'm glad you asked that question. That was something that we have found has been a little bit confusing for several grantees. And so our intent is that the demographic surveys and the shared PD outcome surveys are administered to staff with direct contact with children, so that the numbers for estimated children impacted aren't really kind of artificially inflated when you have the superintendent participating in those programs. So you can include that superintendent in the numbers of people that participated in the shared professional development, but not the total number of children impacted. So if you have those demographic surveys, please don't enter them into the demographic data entry. And I'm not sure if that feedback is coming from us, but hopefully not. And hopefully you can all hear me just fine. Does that make sense, Kendra? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, in a way, I guess it would still be sort of hard to discern and I literally have the report pulled up, and I have it blank right now with a question mark. For those 14 members of the regional, what number even to put in there to actually effectively represent the impact. And I don't want it to come down to just my judgment in terms of the 14 members.
Right.
Because it would literally come up with questions like, so you look at the director of the COCC Early Childhood Program, she, spends a lot of time in classrooms mentoring her students, and it's direct impact. However, and I could do that for all. I the superintendent, and I know he gets into a lot of different programs, not regularly, but weekly. That's one of his main goals. Same with like the director of early childhood special ed. He's in the director of, CPR, and so I'm kind of getting a little cloudy on what to enter in there that would be relevant to the data, that means something, that isn't inflated, but also isn't missing something. I'm kind of on two extremes right now. Do I put in the full number or so question mark, in terms of thinking, like I said, all these judgments on the numbers.
Yeah.
Impact.
And so,
or am I circling around?
No, you were absolutely making sense, and I think other people had the same exact question. I think it's a point of confusion, so I'm glad you asked the question. And so with that number in particular, estimated number of children impacted, when I say that we're trying to focus on staff with direct contact, I really mean teachers and early learning providers. So not directors, not any other kind of administration or superintendent. The teachers or the staff working with children in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. And that's where children impacted will come